Honored today to have longtime college basketball coach and ESPN analyst Seth Greenberg on the show. Coach, great to see you.
Glad to be here. Anytime we can talk some ball, it's a good thing. We're getting close to the start of the season. The season really never ends if you're running a good program. And this is an exciting time of the year because teams are starting to basically develop an identity, an understanding of core beliefs and non-negotiables, an understanding of redefining playing hard, being a good teammate, embracing roles, and understanding what winning basketball is all about. And if you lay that foundation in September, really in college basketball, you got to lay it in the summer because you have those eight
Mhm.
weeks. And if you don't lay it down in the summer, then you have to redefine playing hard once the players come back on campus. And it's hard to go from not playing hard than to playing hard and competing and being a good teammate and playing to win.
I saw on social media that you've kind of begun your preseason college tour, watching some practices and meeting with coaches. So in 2025, and with everything that comes with the current environment of college sports, what would you say are some of your biggest takeaways from watching these early preseason practices?
My biggest takeaways, like I had a chance to see UConn, I had a chance to see Duke, I had a chance to see NC State, I had a chance to see St. John's so far. Yeah, I think the first takeaway is that, and it's kind of what I just talked about before. The best teams have core beliefs and non-negotiables. And the best coaches hold their players to those non-negotiables and core beliefs. It's like parenting. No means no. Yes means yes. You expect a certain type of behavior because being on a basketball team is not a rite of passage. It's a privilege. I don't care if you're getting paid or you're not getting paid. If you're getting paid, obviously, then, it's a little bit different because, to whom much is given, much is expected. But if you're trying to have a team, you can take that money and throw it out the door. Because once they come and cross those lines, they've got to allow themselves to be coached. Now, one of the things I did when I was coaching is I would line our guys up on the baseline almost every single practice and say, if you can allow yourself to be coached today, cross the line. And once you cross that line, it was on. That means you said, I am going to allow you to coach me. The best coaches and the best practices I've seen, and you don't have to rant and rave and scream and yell. It's like my college coach, Alabama, who was one of Bob Knight's assistant coaches, UB Brown's high school coach, one of the winningest coaches in the history of New Jersey basketball. When he got really pissed off at us, he would put us right in line and say, as the count says, like in Count Basie, look him up, kids. He was pretty good. One more time. And there has to be an accountability. It's like anything in leadership. I mean, there's a standard and accountability, and if you want, the day that you don't buy in and uphold the standard is the day you give in to the standard and you change the
Mhm.
standard. So, I used to tell our guys all the time, you want me to lower the bar? Well, I'm not lowering the bar. You've got to raise your level of play to the standard that we've established. So, Rick Pitino. Now, Rick Pitino, he's got the microphone on while he's running practice, but almost right is wrong. Almost right is wrong. You're going to do it the right way. Dan Hurley, the same thing. Mediocre is not accepted. You can make mistakes, but you know what? One, don't make them over and over and over again. That means you're not listening and hearing. And number two is that if you're not competing, that is unacceptable. And basically, it's a reflection of being a bad teammate, not buying into the good of the group, and in the end, it's not winning basketball. I'm at Duke, and John Shire's really talking about now as he's teaching. They're playing a lot of five out now. They'll get into what they're doing later, but he's teaching a lot of 5-on-5. He's teaching concepts. He's teaching read and react and cite things. But I think the biggest but is how we play, being a winning player. He must have said that 8,000 times. That's a winning play. That's not a winning play. All right, that play gets us beat. All right, that's unacceptable. We're better. This is who we are, and this is how we win. You've got to understand, and I think as a coach, you've got to define who are we and how do we win. Like if your players don't, if you walk into a practice, a good practice, and if I can't walk to any player in that team and say, as a team, who are you and how do you win? If that player can't answer that, you've got a bad culture.
Mhm.
All right, they don't even understand your identity, and then looking on top of that, if you walk to that individual player and say, who are you, Tony? And what makes you different? What's the essence that makes you different that impacts winning for our team? Now, if that player doesn't understand and know that clearly, again, you have a problem. Now, I think that early in the season, you push the sides of the box out a little bit. I mean, especially in the summer, you're working on your weaknesses. You're trying to see, how work on your strengths, but develop your weaknesses. But now, once you get into September and October, you're developing your team. And I think John does a really good job. He's a great communicator. He does a really, really good job of teaching skill, teaching concepts, and then applying it to the good of the group, how you can impact the good of the group. Dan Hurley is a guy that you go to the practices, the first 30 minutes of even their summer stuff is skill and development. It's
Mm,
closeout, it's stance, it's 4-on-3, it's 5-on-4, it's ball handling, it's advantage, disadvantage. It's all the things that, like, I grew up in 5-star camp. It's all the things that we would teach each and every day in stations. I mean, that's just the way it is. Will Wade in the practice I saw him, because of their style play, a lot of their stuff is up and down. Now they have breakdown days where they're doing stance and closeout and teaching, how they're switching 1 through 5. So, how do we switch? Do we switching up? We're switching with our arms in the pass lane. We're doing those things, but they do a lot of stuff 5-on-5. Why? Because that's the way they play 5-on-5. And if I coached again, I would play more 5-on-5. Now we would do 40 minutes of defensive development. It started in stance, it started in closeout, it started in 4-on-3 and 5-on-4. It was, shell with coaches in the corner, where anytime the ball got thrown to the corner, they would drive it. We'd have to rotate out of it and play out of that. It was actions. I would do more ODO after I got my stuff in, because that's the way the game is played. Like, I talked to Ryan Oden today, and like, he's got a benefit. He was my former assistant of Rick Carlisle before they go to camp. He lives in Charlottesville.
mm,
He's got Rick Carlisle coming in every single day in practice. Rick's big thing is, obviously, we call it flow now, but just not having to reset, being harder to scout. Like, I think it's really important. How do you make stuff hard to scout? I can scout plays and take teams out of plays. It's harder to take teams out of concepts and actions. I think the game is evolving. But the game's evolving. That's great. But Tony, here's the deal. You say, well, I'm going to play like the Pacers. I hate to tell you, but you don't have the Pacers players. Or, "Well, there's no such thing as the middle game." Well, I hate to tell you, but not everyone's going to shoot 40% of the shots from the three, because they can't make. Like, you've got to figure out the best way for you to give your team a chance to win. Me as a
mhm,
college coach, I go from the Big East to the ACC. I got Duke and Carolina and Maryland when they were really, really good, and Wake Forest with Chris Paul and all those people. And I got to say, well, I got to devise a style of play that gives my team, and I had good players, a chance to beat the best teams in the league. And you, as a coach, that's your responsibility, to put your
mhm,
team in the best position. That's the essence of coaching. The essence of coaching is finding a system that fits your personnel, that gives them the best chance to be successful.
mm.
So in year one in the ACC, we beat Duke. Year three in the ACC, we beat Duke and Carolina on the road. We had really good players, but they understood exactly how we were going to win.
We have players now for 7 to 9 months. And if you're going to accelerate that process of building chemistry and constructing a cohesive team culture, how are the most successful coaches doing that on a practical level?
On a practical level, in the college level, that summer is essential, because, I mean, you think about the number of programs that has completely new teams. Now, I spoke to a coach today, John Welsh, who was my assistant at Long Beach, who's at Fresno State now today, and they have 8 international guys. They didn't get him till just like 3 weeks ago. Like, he goes, "Coach." I said, "John, well, what'd you get? What'd you accomplish in the summer?" He goes, "Coach, the summer we were still trying to raise money for NIL and recruit players." Now, the guys that have their guys in the summer, that's where you've got to really just invest in relationships and do a lot of team building stuff and do a lot of, it drives me crazy. And I have a lot of respect for everyone that does. I look at what I do. Look, I'm a fired basketball coach that has the opportunity to just talk ball. but I lived that thing for 33 years. And that's just the way it is. Tell me I'm nutty. Tell me I'm some. No, that was my life for 33 years. I have an empathy for what these coaches go through. So like when people start saying, well, projected starting lineup, that coach doesn't know what his projected starting lineup is. And if we project starting lineups, here's what happens. AU coach calls, agent calls, parents calls, and everyone else calls the coach. What do you mean you're not going to give my guy a chance to start? Or you're not, you've already decided what you're. So like I think in the summer you don't have to go good on good. You can mix and match. In the summer, it's skill, concept, development. It's defensive foundation. It's early offense. It's flow. It's the baseline of everything you do. Now, Rick Barnes said he could play a game right now. Danny Hurley could play a game right now for sure. And they're not. They don't have their stuff in, but they have their concepts in. They've got their cutting actions in. They've got their spacing actions in. They've got you know all the reads they have to do out of baseline drive 45, middle drive, baseline drive. They've got all their actions off of their penetration and their concepts. So, but I think it's really important. You get these guys on campus. They're recruited in a very short period of time, especially if you got a lot of guys in the portal.
Mhm.
You've got to get to know these guys. You've got to invest in relationships because without relationships, you have no trust. And without trust, you can't have a good team. And you've got to have individual trust in these guys. They've got to have trust in each other. They've got to have belief that we're playing for the good of the group. And John Calipari's line about, the more we win, everyone eats.
Mhm.
You guys got to get guys to buy into winning basketball. You also got to get guys to buy into as you're starting to work with them and develop their games, develop their understanding of the game. You've also got to understand and get them to understand what they look like when they're the best version of themselves. And what I mean by that is every guy that I off to work out for NBA teams or went to Portsmouth or went to the NBA combine, I said, make sure you show people what you can do, not what you can't do. So like when I hear these guys, well, this guy can step out and shoot the three. Well, they're going to need a 3-point shooter. They can find a better shooter than you. But I think it's a way to make all these guys understand what when they're at their very best, when you're at your very best as a coach, when they're at their very best as players, what are they doing? And get them to buy into that's what makes them special. And that's the impact you have on our team and give us a chance, the best chance to win. So
Mhm.
I would use all these early times to input my system, develop individually, invest in relationships, and then get guys to understand what their value is and how much their value still impacts no matter what that role is, their value impacts winning. And that's really, really important.
I've heard you talk about the speed dating nature of recruiting nowadays.
Yeah.
And when you're having to make such quick decisions, what do you feel like the most crucial pieces of intel that you need? But then also identifying red flags. What are you trying to spot so that you avoid headaches or just simply holding back what could be with your roster?
Yeah, it's harder now. I didn't live in obviously this NIL transfer portal free agency world that we live in today. I mean, that's what it is. It's yearly free agency. But I think you've got to like bring guys in and everyone has a circle of influence, Tony. It could be your high school coach, it could be your grassroots coach, it could be your workout guy, it could be your agent, it could be I don't know who it is. But you've got to evaluate that circle of influence and understand are they part of the solution or part of the problem? Is it about only the player or do they understand if the program's successful or you're successful? Dan Hurley talks about watching parents in the stands. I think Stephen Castle, his family wanted Dan to coach Stephen Hart. Worked out pretty good. Worked out pretty good. Rookie of the year, I bet. But I think that the red flags are when guys are about me, expectation, unrealistic, not understanding how hard it is. Like I think you got to tell kids, like college basketball's hard. It's hard. It looks really easy on TV. I tell guys all the time, you come in here and you watch our guys work out, you think that's easy. All right, you come here next year, the first time you crawl across the lane, there's going to be a forearm in your chest, and the guy's going to knock you into tomorrow. It's hard. You watch on TV, and the game looks easy. Nothing against grassroots basketball, EYBL, Under Armour, Adidas, or anyone. Those are exhibitions. They're exhibitions. Guys are playing. They're trying to play hard. You're not deciding what you're going to give them, what you're going to take away, because you got 3 games in one day. You're not looking at film. You're not looking at adjustments. You're not looking at controlling the tempo. You're playing. And there are some really good guys that are coaching grassroots basketball, and I have a lot of respect for it. But that's not reality. That's just not the way it is, man. Because when you get to that next level, whether it's even with your high school team after playing AU basketball, and you're playing twice a week or 3 times a week, and it's analytics and it's film breakdown, it's taking your strengths and trying to, all right, who am I going to exploit defensively? Who am I going to, what matchups am I going to go for? How do they want to get that ball? Like my philosophy of coaching was the other team's best player wasn't beating us. The other team's best player wasn't beating us. We were taking that dude out. We had 4 wins against number one. Go look what happened. We took that dude out. That's the biggest thing. Can you get people to understand we will do everything to help your son realize their potential? Everything. We want him to be the best version of himself and have the greatest experience possible. But that means one voice. All right. We can't have 8,000 voices. We can't have everyone coaching you. And it's really hard today because with the workout guys, I mean, on off days, these guys have workout guys, the agents are having workout guys coming in. Well, that like defeats everything you're trying to do to develop the sense of community. Like you're telling me that an assistant coach at any of these high major schools where these guys are all trying to be pros from, they can't work their players out. I just like to me, I'd have a hard time saying, and I know you have to. I guess I don't think everyone does. I don't think they're rolling into East Lansing and working dudes out. I mean, it's just what I think. I mean, I just don't think that's happened. They're not rolling into Stores, Connecticut and working guys out. Dan Hurley's staff is working those guys out. And I know you got to play the game, but if it's all about me, you're only as good as your locker room, Tony. You know that. I know that. You're only as good as your locker room. And if your locker room is selfish, if your locker room doesn't have accountability, if your locker room has the wrong voice, if your locker room is not together, you're going to face adversity during the season, and they're going to your locker room is going to screw you. So those are the things I would look for. That's a long answer to basically you've got to have high character guys that love the game. I think that's the other thing. Your assistant coach has got to know who can play for the head coach. Not everyone can play for me. If you didn't love the game, you couldn't play for me. If you weren't lost in the game, you couldn't play for me. If you didn't want a coaching staff that was going to pour into you, you weren't going to be a really good player for me. Because I was going to pour into my guys. I was going to be around them. I was going to be talking to them. I was going to be texting them. Not everyone wants it. I understand that. Not everyone was for me. That's just the way it is. But, I think it's really important that the assistant coaches don't worry about what a damn guy's rated. All right? Don't worry about what he's rated. Brian Russell and Lucius Harris weren't rated very high. They had 13-year NBA careers. Jawan Gordon was one of the best guards in Europe. I mean, I had really, really good players. None of them were rated really high. Now, look, it's great if you can get those guys. But, worry about your assistants. You need to know who can play for that head coach. Number one, most important thing.
You mentioned the staff, so I'll ask if you were building a staff for a major basketball program today, what would you look for?
Coaches, dudes that can coach. Good coaches who can help players get better, become good recruiters. Guys that love the game, guys that are innovative, guys that are going to understand that it's kind of a way of life. It's a lifestyle. It's probably sometimes not overly healthy, but yeah, you got to have a network. But if you're good at what you do, if you can coach, if you can connect with, so if you can coach, so what's the first thing you have to do to be a good coach? Flip the interview.
I think a big part of it is the ability to teach and communicate.
Second word, most important thing. You can't teach unless you can communicate. You're right on the money. So you've got to have people that connect with your players. That those guys can trust. Because let's face it, it's like the graduation thing back in the day. Now no one even talks about graduation. And, that's the biggest BS thing in the world now. I mean, like that's the problem we have right now. That's the major problem I have in college athletics. We used to say build a bridge to cross. All right. 4 for 40. Go to school 4 years, it lasts you the 40 most important years of your life. Now it's NIL. Do you talk about majors? You talk about academic support? Do you meet the president? Half of the guys are taking classes online and sitting in the study hall with tutors. So, but I think the first and foremost thing, you've got to be able to communicate and connect. If you can communicate it and connect and you can coach, those are three simple C's. Communicate, connect, and coach, you'll be able to recruit if you have a work ethic.
Mhm.
And I think that's really, really important. You need a network, sure, you need a network. But now you have a general manager. Now a lot of times it's about your package. So like, but what do players want to do? They want to get to another level. How's the best way for them to get to another level? Get better. Have a great strength coach who could communicate, has a basketball background. I'm a big believer in that. I had a really good one at Virginia Tech, David Jackson. He played at Virginia Tech, terrific, but he also could transition to strength coach and stuff that apply to basketball. Have your analytics people, but that's what they're there for. Information. You got to decide how you're going to use it and how much information, because your players can only process so much. It's really important. Today, probably have a general manager that is keeping track of every good mid-major player in the country, who's building relationships with the agents, because the agents have turned into the grassroots coaches. The agents have turned into now. Me personally, I don't understand it. You pay an agent 20%. You don't need an agent if you're a good player. Why? Why are you giving someone 20%? That's me. And then get guys that are really good coaches. And one thing I would do is at one point I had one guy do all my scouting for me. When I was at certain places as an assistant, I did all the scouting. I think you've got to have ownership. I would split my scouting up, but I would have two video coordinators so that we were always ahead of the curve. And
Mhm.
like so that you have your next two games. Plus, you have to have someone editing out, and it's available. Things like you do, which is terrific. Like I spend a lot of time just on social media or on looking at sites, and I'll pick out actions and stuff, and I'll be sending them to my friends. Saying, hey, really good ATO, short clock, or hey, a lot of it is more short clock or ATO stuff because I think you got to steal baskets. I think that's one of the when you get in league play, the team that I call them special situations. First play of the game, first play of the half, ATOs, free throw situations, dead ball inbounds, under and side. If you chart that in league play, and it's a 5 point game, I guarantee the team that wins specials
Yeah.
wins wins the game.
Yeah.
It's like I think I would tell all high school coaches or all coaches in general, what are the things that get you fired besides being socially ignorant? What are things that get you fired? I'll tell you what things that get fired. What do people lose their minds in the stands? Dead ball inbound, up one, underneath your basket, can't run, can't get it in bounds. Four parents in the stands going, what do they have? Underneath out of bounds defense, give it up layup. You're 5 versus 4. Full court pressure, 3/4 court trap, diamond and one, whatever it is. You can't attack it and you're throwing the ball all over the place. That's the stuff that people lose their mind on. And Bobby Booster, who gives $100 to the high school fund, is losing his mind. That on top of obviously parents being parents. Me, I want coaches. I want
Mhm.
guys that are caught up and lost in the game, that can communicate, connect, and can coach.
Mhm.
If they can do that and help players get better, and you have a good GM now, and you have evaluate. Don't have someone else tell you who can play. Your eyes will tell you who can play. I don't need someone to tell me, oh yeah, he's really good. No, can he play for your head coach? That's your job. Got to be able to evaluate. It's not about the list. It's about what I call evaluating up. It's not where our guy is now. Where can he get to if he's in love with the game and lost in the game?
Yeah.
Those things are important to me.
Let me ask you about the game itself. What do you feel like, if anything, has the transient nature of roster building done in relationship to what happens on the floor, the offensive and defensive systems?
Yeah, I think it's more the peer pressure of how everyone thinks they have to play. I mean, it takes. That's why you need to take advantage of the summer. I mean, that's
Mhm.
why you got to input stuff earlier, and get them to understand how to play. That's where the internationals are so far ahead of us because, the international development programs, the morning is weights and skill work, and the afternoon is concept work. And they practice multiple times a day. There's no load management there. But yeah, I think that first of all, roster construction, and as if you watched anything on TV last year, I probably said it 4,000 times, is the most important thing. And I think the key is that I think that Florida did something really smart. Multiple year transfers, getting guys that are going to be around them for more than 1 year, so they're not rentals. It's not speed dating. Get
Mhm.
guys that you can get 2 or 3 years out of. And that's why we got to have some type of guidelines. Like with everything that's going on, we need contracts, so we do. But I think in terms of roster construction and preparation, I think you really, the days of in the summer, some skill work, some 2-on-2 stuff, you've got to be more proactive developing a team concept and what's acceptable, what's a good shot, what's not a good shot, what's acceptable, what's not acceptable. I think the summertime is imperative because you can't do it in 6 weeks. I mean, we have exhibition games October 15th. That's when I used to first start my practices.
Mhm.
I could look at my calendar right here. Media days for the ACC is the 7th and 8th, the 14th and 15th for the SEC, the Big 12's 22 and 23. Purdue plays Kentucky in an exhibition game on the 24th. Auburn plays Oklahoma State on an exhibition game on the 15th. I mean, Alabama plays Florida State on the 16th. That would have been the first 2 days of practice. So if you don't use your 8 hours, if you don't use your summer wisely, you're so far behind. So I would get more in and still do the concept work. And let's face it, these kids are on campus in the summer. Not a lot of people are on campus. Your managers and your support group around, they have access to the building 24/7 because everyone has a practice facility. So you got to utilize your time to make sure you teach them how to play and developing some type of chemistry.
What are the guys like Nate Oates, John Shire, you mentioned, concept basketball? That sounds easier than it can
Oof,
be sometimes. How do you see them implementing that? How are they teaching them to play that? Because for a lot of guys, this is still foreign. Coming from high school systems, it's trickling down, but it's still very foreign to a lot of guys. And it's great that you have all those weeks in the summertime, but it's
yeah.
sometimes it's still even not enough time.
Well, it's like the old days teaching motion. If you didn't have patience teaching motion, you had no chance. I
Mhm.
mean, like if you want to play real motion, everyone can go, 3 out 2 in motion, everyone can go, so some form of mover blocker, which is a little bit more intricate. Everyone can go, 4 around 1 with with random ball screens from the five. But that's not real motion. Real motion is what Coach Knight did. Real motion is what Jim Cruz did. Real motion is really, really hard and you need to be very patient to teach. John's they did a lot of the other day, 2-on-2, 3-on-3, 4-on-4, 5-on-5, building up to it. Like, they just spent a lot of time on just 2-on-2 screening, wide pin downs, reading the wide pin down, boom, reversal, wait on it, go get the guy, boom. It's going to be a wider pin down. You got to bring the screener a little tighter because if not, the guy's just going to go ball side. So I mean, I think teaching guys how to read and set screens. Everyone wants a ghost. That was just a slip. Ghost is a slip. I mean, we have all these new great names, like Spain action's a ball screen, back screen. Well, so that means that Dean Smith ran Spain action out of the break. Because he would drag. If he dragged and ran, got that boom, it was going to be ball screen, back screen. In the old days, there was a lot of high 1-4 stuff that, oh my goodness, at Oregon State, Ralph Miller ran and one of the actions out of the high 1-4 was hit, follow, pin down, dribble, handoff to a wide pin on the other side. But that's zoom action now. And it's good because it's easy to identify things, whether it's, and that's great. And there are some things that have changed the game to some extent. But I think, well, how are you going to be a good flow concept team? First, you got to be able to spacing, cutting, passing, screening. All right. And then, all right. So now you got to read the screen. All right. So now you do. Now, all right. On the passer that goes away, is he going to bring the ball to the action or is he, if the guy back cuts in, he replaces, is the cutter getting through? I mean, I think teaching it progressively is a really good way to teach it. Dan does it, starts with 5 on 0, after he does some breakdown stuff, and he'll call out baseline drive, which means basically let's get to the 45. Middle drive. He'll throw grenade to boom, and they gotta whatever they're doing, they gotta get to those places.
Mhm.
And their offense is just a work of art. I mean, but it's really, really hard. And early on, even with this team, and there's a lot of new pieces, the spacing isn't right, the cutting isn't as hard, guys aren't waiting, for things. Guys aren't they, you can turn into a jump shooting team by doing that, as opposed to, like, you still got to get pressure at the rim, whether it's a cut to a post up, or whether it's a pin down to a shape up, or whether it's a paint touch. You still got to get pressure in the paint. You still got to put pressure on defense, or you become a 3-point shooting team with not a great opportunity to offensive rebound, because you haven't put the defense at a disadvantage. So, but what John's done is really good. Nate, who I'll see probably, actually won't see the practice the last 2 years. They do a lot of teaching 4 on 4 and 5 on 5, and he's a really good, he's a really good teacher. Their film sessions are really, really good.
Hmm.
Like, they go early in the morning, so if you get there early, you can sit back in the room and see their film sessions, and it's really interesting to watch, because I remember LeBaron Fallon, he missed a shot or two, and then, like, he passed up a good shot off a good second penetration where they got a second paint touch and kick out, and he goes, like, you have to shoot that. I don't get it, you have to shoot that. All right, that's a shot you have to shoot. There's a great accountability of playing the way they want to play, and they're great, obviously, in specials and under and sides. And Ryan's really good at his stuff that he brought there, from the NBA stuff, is really, really good.
I saw Duke practice their first practice of the season. I was working up there at the camp this summer, and they, from the very beginning, were creating even shooting drills that had decision making in it, and was repping the actions and the offense,
Yeah,
probably to the point where the guys didn't necessarily know that they were learning the offense, but from day one
yeah.
they were doing it.
John was big, and I visited with him for about an hour before practice, and he was really, really big on getting guys to, like he said, Coach, today's practice is gonna be really ugly. Coach, we're gonna go 3 on 3, 4 on 4, 5 on 5 live, and the ball's gonna go all over the place. He was right. But he says, and he's right. Herm Edwards used to tell me this when Herm's wife worked in South Florida, when I was in South Florida. So we were around him a bunch, and then obviously with ESPN. And Herb said, the best players sight things early. And
Yeah.
what made Tom Brady so good? He could sit underneath there, look. He could see not only what you were doing defensively, but what you were going to do by. So he was a second or two ahead of people in terms of sighting. The great
Mhm.
D-backs sight. The best basketball players, they process things differently. Magic Johnson processed things, saw plays before they happened. The great passing guards, the great cutting players, they see things before they happen. But to learn that, it's a growing pains. And John was very honest about, how they were going about teaching it. And then even their post-practice stuff that they do during the season. They do a lot of stuff, and they were really good at that little pin down and slip last year with Knipple and Cooper, and they were really, really good in that. And they were also really good in that two-man game to short roll on the switch, to get either of those guys in a short roll, where they then played out of the short roll to attack the big, and got threes. So, but that's all repetition. But it takes time to psych that and see that and make that play on instinct as you see the defense move. And it also takes a while for these guys, again, a lot of young players, reading the tag, reading the rotation, reading when there isn't a tag, reading when there's lob, knowing who to sight. Like, I'm coming here. All right, there's a hard dive. Right, where's the rotation? All right, is the weak side got caught? Boom, that thing's got to go. All right, or if we're an open side, they're coming in out of, and they're maybe going to X out from the other big. Where's the cut coming from? Where's the open area? So there's a lot to it, but John's really, really good. I'll tell you, his poise is phenomenal. Transitioning from Coach K, and having worked for Coach K, but this is John Shire's program, and he's running this program in his image and
Mhm.
how he feels it's in the best interest of his personality. And he can be
Mhm.
demanding, and he can be, but he is himself. Really, really impressed with that. Just like Dan Hurley's himself, or Tom Izzo's himself, or John Calipari's himself, or Shaka Smart is himself, or whomever it might be. There are a lot of really good coaches out there, and they're doing a really good job. And it's hard. I would think the one thing is it's really hard to win. It's hard to win. I don't care what level, your level, college level. It's hard to win a game. It is
Mhm.
because the other guys got 13 guys or 14 guys or 15 guys on scholarship. They're practicing every day. They're deciding what to give and what to take away. They're developing an identity. They're trying to impose their identity on their opponent. They're trying to be physical, be tough, or be whatever. It's hard to win. And I'll tell you the other thing is it's also hard to win after you lose. That's like we always say, and this is where I was really bad as a young head coach, my first year at Long Beach State. We always teach our players how to next player play mentality. As coaches, we got to have a next play mentality.
Mhm.
So you can't, by the time you come back into that practice, you can't be so like I beat myself up so much watching the film, notes, this meeting, this. By the time I got to practice, I wasn't the best version of myself the first year as a head coach. You've got to understand that you're asking your players to get to the next play. You've got to next play. You got to get to the next play. And teaching, you got to get in, you got to get out. Chris Beard, if you ever get a chance to watch his practices, great teacher. And he has the ability to teach, get out, and then get back into the practice. Now he'll watch 18,000 hours of film and watch every single play, but but he's a terrific teacher, and
Mhm.
and their film sessions are right to the point. Really, really good.
The single biggest piece of advice that you would give to any basketball coach from high school to college in navigating this current climate, what would it be?
Be comfortable in your own skin. Be true to your convictions and your core beliefs and non-negotiables. And yeah, as a coach, you have to have agility coaching your team, depending on injuries and things like that. But I think the most important thing is don't spend an ounce of energy if you're going to coach, and that's what you saw. You want to coach. Don't spend an ounce of energy complaining about the state of college basketball or the state of whatever. Pour yourself into your team. Pour yourself into your team. Don't moan. Don't complain. It's like John Wooden's three. Don't whine, don't complain, don't make excuses. Like if this is what you're going to do, pour yourself into it. This is what you're going to do. You can't spend all your time complaining and moaning and griping about it. If
Mhm.
not, then do something else. Because if you're doing all those things, who else is doing those things? Team, because they read you. If you're a good coach and you have a connection with your players, they're reading your words. But I'll tell you the other thing they're reading, and this is important. They're reading your body language. Because if your words don't match your body language doesn't match your words, they're thinking you're full of shit. They're not buying it. And I probably just think the other, just two things, big things I believe in. Your investment equals your expectation. That's as important as anything else. Your investment equals your expectation for your players, for your program, for your administration. That's really, really, really important. That's probably I'll leave with that because that's just really important that people don't understand that.